welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about how to slow down a busy day. Because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been just like caught up in the hustle and bustle lately, the busy, and just kind of wondered like, how the hell do I find a pause button in my day? I actually, last week when I recorded the podcast that goes along with this, it was one of the busiest weeks of my year. It's historically one of the busiest weeks of my year. And I'm actually in a lot of ways really, really grateful that this was the content that I had scheduled. You know, maybe it was serendipity, maybe it was subconscious, who the hell knows? But this is the content that I had planned to talk about. And I think reflecting on all of the ways that I've kind of found pause buttons in my life was actually really, really good for me last week. And I managed to get out of that week relatively unscathed. So let's take a dive into a bunch of different tips. I've got about 8 different tips for how we can slow down a busy day. So let's dive in. First is all about focusing on one thing at a time. I actually find that one of the best ways to do this is to just almost think about focusing on one tab at a time or one program at a time. I'm going to do a screen share really quickly and show you that I am fully guilty of this being how I work. Now, I have a very, very wide screen. I have about a 34-inch screen, which is why the dimensions look a little bit off, but I wanted to show you guys how it is that I work when I work. I'm fully guilty of this, but when I'm working, I inevitably end up with a split screen where I'm pulled between 2 different windows, sometimes multiple different tabs. We all know, well, at least like logically, we all know that multitasking can actually make you less productive and more stressed. And yet I still find myself doing this all the time. It is something I'm 100% guilty of. Drop a comment below if you're like this as well. So one of the things I try to do intentionally to slow myself down when I know I've been doing this a lot and when I know I have a lot going on is to really, really ask myself and try to push myself to just focus on one thing, one tab, one program at a time as I'm working. This I just find is so helpful because it keeps my brain from feeling like it's ping-ponging between things on my computer. I feel vastly less chaotic, less overwhelmed, even when I'm super, super busy. So that's tip number 1, is to focus on one thing, maybe even one tab or one program at a time. This I just find is so helpful because it keeps my brain from feeling like it's ping-ponging between things on my computer. I feel vastly less chaotic, less overwhelmed, even when I'm super, super busy. So that's tip number 1, is to focus on one thing, maybe even one tab or one program at a time. My next tip is something that I don't do a ton of anymore because I don't do a ton of time blocking in terms of how I work, but this is something that was like a godsend for me forever ago. And it's this notion to double how long you think each task will take. Most of us are really, really terrible at estimating how long activities will take. And I actually think there's a Tony Robbins quote that kind of speaks to this. He says, many people overestimate what they can do in a week or a year, and they underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to, you know, our day-to-day lives. We overestimate what we can do in a day or a week, and we vastly underestimate what we can get done in like a quarter. You know? And that's where I think this mindset shift is really, really helpful, because if we overschedule our day, that's going to add to our stress and it's going to constantly make us feel like we're behind. So this is something I've done before with tremendous success. I just doubled my estimate. So if I think something's going to take 15 minutes, I plan it for 30. If I think something's going to take an hour, I plan 2 hours. Give yourself more time to complete each task. And I really, really believe this applies to commutes too. You will thank yourself if you do this with your commutes. And ultimately, you might schedule less onto your schedule each day, but inherently, if something takes less time, now you either have an extra pocket of time in your day that you can use to get ahead, or you can use it to just finish your day early. And I kind of feel like that's a bonus. Tip number 3 is a bit of an obvious one, but turn off your phone or disconnect from the internet. Now, what this really comes down to is the fact that we are inundated with excess information, whether that information is coming from our phones or it's coming from the internet. And we get distracted by that, inevitably. That is always the outcome. Now, I totally know that this tip is only applicable to certain types of work, but even then, I think for a lot of us, there's more stuff we can do offline than we think. Like, as I was writing the blog post that goes along with this, I 100% do that inside of the editor for my website, but I could very well do it inside of Notion, for example. I actually do a lot of the pre-planning for all of the blogs and content for my business, inside of Notion. But even then, Notion, that's one of Notion's flaws and drawbacks, is they don't have a good offline mode for Notion. It doesn't actually even have an offline mode. So even then, if I wanted to be fully offline and not even using, Notion to set things up, I could do that in a Word document. So there are ways, even though it might not be the way you normally do something, there are ways to get yourself offline. If though you can absolutely not disconnect and you need the internet to do your work, I actually might recommend, instead of working on a laptop or a computer, work on like an iPad, work on a tablet. The reason why I recommend this is I actually find that sometimes I am more productive and efficient and focused when I'm on an iPad because of the fact that the iPad has reduced functionality compared to a laptop. My 34-inch screen that I'm looking at right here, I can split screen super easily, but on an iPad, it's not as efficient to do that. It has a slightly reduced functionality, and that actually makes it a lot harder to multitask on an iPad. So I tend to have a better ability to kind of have a singular focus when I'm working on my iPad. It actually works to my benefit in a lot of ways. So that's an alternative here as well. Number 4 is to take breaks and check in with yourself. I think this is one of those things that some of us, me, may not be very good at. This is also probably one of those things that some of us might not feel like we have a lot of control over in our lives, especially if you have a more corporate job. In my day job, it's definitely like this. Like, I totally get this, that sometimes I have back-to-back meetings, and the vast majority of the time, the meetings that end up on my schedule for my day job are not things that I have control over scheduling. In fact, they rarely are. I could 100% cheat the system and build breaks into my availability, but the result of that ends up meaning that I have much, much longer work days. And I don't really want that. I would rather have my things be close together. But what I can do, what's something that can benefit me, which again, I'm not great at doing, but I try to do, especially when I know I'm gonna have really, really busy day, is to make sure I'm being more intentional and more purposeful in my breaks. I get 5 minutes between sessions, and it's really about making sure those 5-ish minutes between sessions that I am using them well. Make sure I get up from the computer, make sure I'm refilling my water bottle, make sure, go stand by the window. Not necessarily enough time to go upstairs and like use the rooftop, but when I used to have a balcony in my apartment, I would go out and I would kind of sit on the balcony for those 5 minutes. So trying to get up, get away from my computer and my desk, get away from technology and to-do lists, and just make sure I am taking my break more purposefully. I also try to make sure I'm eating lunch away from my desk, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrible at that. I do a lot better on it actually when I'm in really, really busy mode, because that is like my break, and I'm like, okay, get me away from my desk. So even if you can't take breaks, can't take more substantial breaks, it might just be on making your breaks better and using your break time better. Number 5, say no when you need to. I'm not going to belabor this one. We're going to keep this one short and sweet because we all know we need to set boundaries. It's easy to fall into the trap of saying yes to everything. It's easy even to fall into the trap of convincing ourselves that every little moment of break time that we have needs to be filled with something productive to use our time well. And eventually all you're going to do is just tap yourself out and overwhelm yourself and burn yourself out perhaps. So don't be afraid to say no, even if it's saying no to yourself, when you need to prioritize your own time, your own self-care, your own well-being. Setting boundaries can help you avoid that. And sometimes it's not just about setting boundaries with others. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries with ourselves. A good chunk of the time, actually. Hey, Editor Ellen coming at you here, realizing that the video got cut off at the start of tip number 6. So tip number 6 is all about changing your environment. Because sometimes we need to hack our environment to create an environment of calm and focus. We can do this in a lot of different ways. We can do this with lighting. So right now I have a light that lights my desk as I work. I use it a lot for video calls to make sure, I'm not super dark. I try not to make sure when I'm using it that I'm washing myself out and that it's too bright. So you can kind of see how bright this sucker is getting. That can be really, really intense, not only for video, but that can be really intense for me to be under that spotlight. When I am using this light, I try to do enough light that I have good lighting on my face, but not so much lighting that it's really aggressive to me, because that environmental piece can add to our stresses as well. So we can hack it with lighting. We can also hack our environment with scents and sounds. I love listening to binaural beats or sometimes even just nature sounds as I'm working, because they put me into a very focused, relaxed state. But another way that we can hack our environment is with scents. So whether it is you light candles, or maybe you have a diffuser. My favorite diffuser combination is peppermint and lavender. I almost forgot I have a diffuser because I haven't used it in so long, but that is a great way to hack your environment as well. And then lastly with this one, just get out in fresh air. Sometimes the best way we can change our environment and give ourselves that little slowdown, that little pause button in a day, is to just get outside and get some fresh air. It can not only clear your mind, but getting outside can relax you because it's getting you away from a lot of the technology and a lot of the things that are perhaps adding to your stress and adding to your busy. Plus, if I'm going outside with something like a walk, that actually helps me process whatever stress is actually in my body. So walking is a great way to take breaks. Obviously, it just depends on how long you have to take the break. But those are various different ways you can hack your environment. Decrease the intensity of your light, get some nice scents around you, or just get out into sunshine, get that vitamin D, go for a walk so that you can get that stress out of your body. And we're back. Hopefully the lighting's not super different. My battery died, so we had to wait for the sucker to recharge. But I am back with tip number 7. And tip number 7 is all about taking daily mini vacations. I used to talk about this all the time, and I'm like mad at myself because I stopped. A daily mini vacation is something I read about in a book, and if I remember what the heck book this was, I will let you know. But I really, really love the notion of it because it's a simple pause button that we can create in our day. This is what this whole video is about, is this notion of a simple pause button. And that's exactly what a daily mini vacation is. It is about taking 5 to 15 minutes every single day to just savor something. It genuinely does not matter what that thing is. It can be a cup of coffee, which, speaking of, I love me some coffee. I'm such a Seattle girl. But it can be savoring your morning coffee. It can be savoring a moment of, just beautiful warm sunshine. It can be savoring your favorite song, savoring anything. It's basically giving yourself a small moment of pause and a small moment of relaxation and doing it deliberately. And again, the beauty of it is just 5 to 15 minutes. That is such an easy thing to work in, and it's a really, really handy tip. Number 8 is to make lists. And I will admit this is something that I personally don't do, but I remember seeing it somewhere and I was like, I love this. For people who've tried journaling, but really frankly, they just don't vibe and jive with the idea of journaling, especially in the midst of like busy chaos, I love this notion of making lists because I feel like it gives that same kind of idea of what journaling is intended to give you, but in a way that is so much more accessible. Like you could create a gratitude list, you could create a bucket list, a list of puppy names, places you want to travel. It can literally be lists of anything, but it's about that pause button. It's about creating like an inventory of things that bring you joy and happiness. It's just a beautiful little exercise that is so easy to slip into your day, no matter how busy you are, to really just help you kind of refocus and recenter yourself. So that is number 8, making lists. And last one, number 9, is all about developing simple rituals. This is one that I know I want and need more of in my life, but I've also really realized that there's certain things that I do in my mornings and in my evenings that feel like rituals. There's something that's just so different, in my opinion, about like the notion of a ritual versus like a routine. A ritual just almost feels like more nourishing. Like, it might be weird to say it, but it just like feels just so much more like delicious and purposeful and intentional. And I don't know, maybe it's just the simple mindset shift of calling something a morning ritual versus a morning routine. Maybe that's just it. But I think rituals are beautiful little ways to create pauses for yourself. So whether it's a ritual of lighting a candle to start your day, or maybe you have a ritual of making like a pour over coffee or a French press in the morning, and making coffee is a big ritual for you in your day. Maybe it's a morning yoga routine. I've actually really started to kind of ritualize my little stretch in the morning that I do, that I've really got back into. I got away from it for a while, but I'm getting back into it and I really, really love it. It feels like a ritual. It feels like something that I'm doing to pour back into me. And these rituals I find are just such a beautiful little way to create a little bit more peace, a little bit more balance, that pause button that we've been talking so much about today. And I think these are just some really, really fun ways to do that. Again, they don't take up too much time. They don't take up too much bandwidth. It's just about giving yourself that pause in the day. And that's what I love about this notion of creating simple rituals. If you have some rituals that you do, please drop them in the comments below, because I am on the lookout for some new ideas for me personally. Selfishly, I want to learn from you. That is it. Those are my 9 different tips for how you can create some calm and some peace and slow down in your busy AF life and in a busy AF day. I really tried to keep some of them things that we know and love that you're familiar with, but also some of the things that maybe you've never thought of. But the whole idea with all of these is that there should be short, simple, sweet, to the point pause buttons for you to create a little bit of space for you in your busy as hell day. If you benefited a lot from this video, go ahead and drop a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that, thank you again so much, my friend, for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.